It's not a fantasy world where
not just
everything's
alternative.
rainbows. Like, hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Gabe.
And we're
the Ghouls Next Door. Feels
Yo,
like a minute.
That's that in syncness
Yeah.
that we just experienced that we cannot achieve.
When we're far away.
Yeah, that was wild. That was so satisfying. Like in like a mental and just like
Yeah.
yes.
It's like when things line up. Where you have when you like put a box in another box and it's like whoop.
Yeah,
And
it
you're
made
like,
my brain happy.
Nice.
That's all I know.
Yes. And you know what else makes me happy? Queer representation in horror.
Fact.
So this is December. Happy December, listeners and viewers. And we are starting a new series, as we do on most months.
Yep.
And we are going to be talking about queer horror, or horror in which there are queer themes, queer people, queer issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, it's a part of the story.
Yes.
It's not just like, it's for comedy, or it's to just like murder, or, you know, it's like actually a part of the plot. It's important. And also like films that make you feel seen a little bit. In a way that when a lot of times you'll get like queer characters that are just villains that you don't feel seen. And you're just like, ugh.
Or like you kind of have to dub something queer when there's like a hero or a monster or something that you can identify with. So we kind of put the queer label on it, but it's not necessarily queer.
Yeah. Or like your favorite anime. Or like the character. Yes. You're just like, and kiss. Like, it's perfect.
Those characters should be together.
Yeah.
And I understand fan fiction.
Yeah.
That's my existence as someone who is, reading and watching anime that I missed out on as a youth and being like, why aren't you gay?
Yeah, or you're like, oh my god, if this character was a girl character, like, nothing would change with their story. Why is it just all these men?
Danjiro!
Kurapika!
Yes! Oh my god, Kurapika, so much. And, there's a lot of that. Especially watching anime now, having been spoiled by She-Ra. Right? I'm definitely like, okay, clearly you can make everyone gay and it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think with this, with this series, what we're finding is, kind of similar to the vein of, Jordan Peele made Get Out. And he made this big statement to show, how, we can make social horror. It can be enjoyable. And even then, with it being, advertised inappropriately as a comedy and not really being seen as horror.
Get Out was not a comedy.
There was funny things, but the funny parts of it were uncomfortable funny.
Yeah.
Because you were supposed to feel that way. But I think the second part of that was him creating Us. Yeah. And it being here's a black family in a horror film.
A horror film, no doubt, no question about it.
Yeah, and it just has a black family at the head, which is phenomenal and it's great. And that's the representation that we need. And I think that's what we see in some of the films that we're going to explore is sometimes honestly, a benefit of it is just having queer characters that are yes, I am queer. This is my husband or my partner, or I am in love with this girl and I am also a girl. To have those there, just the existence of it and not. And so, we're going to run the 2 episodes we start this series with, the films that we're going to explore, have some, give and take of, positives and negatives, as most things. Yeah. And so, I just hope that we get more,
Yeah. When you think of it kind of right now we're seeing a lot of firsts. First black woman as vice president, or Asian American and black American.
Yeah.
And then you have, first black woman to be hired as the PR director of a sports team. Things like that. There's a lot of firsts, and it's we want to get to the point where there's not firsts anymore. It's just like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
A human.
We just have that.
has a position, and that's great.
Yeah, that they earned, and it's cool.
And it's just like, it's not just all white men.
Yeah.
What? Or like just all white people. There's not firsts anymore, because it's just normal. I think that's the goal that I think Jordan Peele's setting out to get to, too.
Yeah.
And then just like, in this as well, like just trying to get to a point where queer is a part of the story, but it's not all the characters are, because that's what you get in a lot of films where like their entire identity is just like, this is them, and they're gay, and that's all their character development.
Yeah, and that's like
more than that.
And like it's something, you know, like it's a joke, or it's the last remark, or what have you. Sorry, I wanted to look up the actor's name so I can reference it. But yeah, like I agree with what you're saying. Like, we wanted the first, like, and even that controversial quote by Jordan Peele where he says like, I'm never going to make a film that stars a white man. He's like, we've seen that film. I've seen that film. I have no interest in it.
Yeah.
And so I think like we can really do that. So I think, you know, opening up this series with a film that has gay characters, and that our lead character is a black gay character. And he, honestly, like, the film has some really, really good parts, but I think the heart of it, like the best part of this film, is him.
No, I totally agree. He's, one, the best actor.
Yes.
Two, like, has the most emotional, like, connection, I'd say, compared, like, and you're following him, so that makes sense. He's, like, the protagonist of the story, but he does a fantastic job. Yeah.
So what we're talking about is Spiral from 2019. So not to be confused with Spiral, the Saw film that Chris Rock, your 2021 film Spiral is Chris Rock. That is correct.
Like you do.
So not to be confused with Chris Rock's Spiral, which is a part of the Saw series. So if you Google it, Google Spiral 2019. It's on Shudder.
Yeah. And to give you a little synopsis of Spiral 2019, which is just what we're going to call it now. There's more than one. A same-sex couple move to a small town to enjoy a better quality of life and raise their daughter with strong social values. But when neighbors throw a very strange party, nothing is as it seems in their picturesque neighborhood. It's directed by Curtis David Harder, the same producer of What Keeps You Alive, and written by Colin Minahan, which also What Keeps You Alive, and John Palaquin, which is a fun last name.
Palaquin.
Oh, that's a better way to say it. Palaquin.
Yes. So we covered What Keeps You Alive in our queer representation, or LGBTQIA representation, with Jacqueline Constance. And I remember there's the part of it that, in a similar vein, it was like, this is a stressful kind of like thriller film that just so happens to have lesbians as our like antagonists and protagonists. Like it just so happens that they're both women. Yeah. But like, because it was written in a way that it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because honestly, most films are written that if you switch them out, it really wouldn't matter. You could just make them people. Right?
Because I think, there's this like weird that's like put upon like relation, where it's like gay marriage is a big deal, where it's like they're just people in love who love each other and like want to be. It's the same, like marriage in the same vein. Like it's not a fantasy world where everything's rainbows. Like it's just love, man. So, people have problems, people have solutions, people just have a good time, bad time, whatever. It's still love.
Yeah. It just makes me think of
They make it seem so fancy and weird.
The Key and Peele skit after gay marriage, like Obama did
it.
And everything was like gay married, and it was like the gay this and gay. He's like, it's just and there's this whole conversation. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Jordan Peele had been out here saying it. So this film is similar to that, which is like it kind of has like part of that is a positive, part of it is a negative. Yeah. So some people watching it going in, and like when you see the trailer, you definitely get this like Get Out but queer kind of vibe, because it's like, okay, here's some people, and in the beginning of the film it really does feel like that, because there's like conversations that happen that you like, as an outsider of that community, it's just a conversation. But you see that the actor, which I'm going to name his name right now, Jeffrey Bower-Chapman.
What a cool name.
Yeah, he's also in Unreal.
Okay,
he's one of the producers, and I was like, why do I recognize him, and why do I already love him? But his character, like, as they're going through, like, the weird white neighbors in the suburban town will say something, and his white man partner is like, no, like, they're just saying, like, that's nothing, and they're like, he's just like, are you not understanding the subtext, like, what they're really saying underneath their words, which is one of the golden parts of Get Out, was, like, the majority of that film was just, like, make you uncomfortable trying to exist in normal situations. And be gaslit the whole time. And that's what the beginning of this film is. It's gaslighting, and it's just him, like, existing in this town, already feeling like an outsider because he's, like, the only person of color. And then on top of that, he's gay. And it's during the AIDS epidemic. So we get, like, these digs and some things like that, like, of...
Yeah, you have, like, a lot of homophobic kind of rhetoric kind of being thrown around like it's nothing. And you have some, like, really great commentary in terms of, like, what it was like back in the AIDS epidemic just to be a gay person, and all the, like, misinformation and, like, really just not okay things that people just thought were okay to say.
Yeah.
So you get that. And then, as you said, like, the gaslighting and, like, the weird moments where you're like, they said that, they meant it in a way, and this guy's not recognizing that it was meant in a way, and it definitely was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do like that, like, the dichotomy between these two characters, because they're both gay men, right? But even in that, they're still living two different lives, right? Like, they have different experiences. Like, he clearly comes from a place of privilege in his own right, even being gay, because he has the luxury of not reading into it and not assuming that, like, there is danger here, right? Like,
his luxury of being a white man.
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing in the gay community, is that there's still a lot of racism that exists.
Yeah.
And, like, white men are way more accepted in the gay community in, like, terms of, like, mainstream. There's a lot of, like, bars that if you're black and gay, you can't go to because it's, like, not safe.
Yeah, even here in Philadelphia, there's a lot of, like, controversy.
What was that place called? We've been there.
It is Candy. It was something Candy. Eye Candy, I think.
Eye Candy.
Eye Candy. And that was that they had their not so subtle clothing requirements, like dress code, which was like you couldn't wear Timbs, and you couldn't, like, it was like literally just like, what do black people wear that we assume black people would wear? You can't come in here if you wear them.
Yeah.
Which is like, why not?
Yeah.
And yeah, so Eye Candy was trash, but the owner of Eye Candy, like, he was recorded saying some racist awful things. So but we digress.
That's not about the film.
But I think but I mean, that speaks to it, right? Like, because, in that community, in the gay community, you know, there is still racism. There still is this, you know, there's levels to that acceptance. But also, even in him, like, he's an outsider of an outsider, right? Because also in the black community, it's like, gay and the LGBTQIA community is also, like, you know, frowned upon or not given the right resources or not looked at.
Yeah, there's a lot
properly.
of ignorance surrounding it.
Yeah, so it's like there's so many levels and it's all compounded onto him as a character. And I think he really, like, brings all those stresses to life. And he is, like, as a character, the embodiment of anxiety. Yeah. And it's added stress as a viewer, because we can't help him, you know, and you can just see him spiraling out of control, and he is alone. And everyone is telling him he's overreacting. Everyone is telling him, like, don't think about it. You're spiraling back to the past. Like, you're, like, losing it. And then on the you know, on the outside of it is that there is a weird pagan cult thing that is, you know, attacking people who are minorities or the current vulnerable community, which happens to be at that time gay men. I think on top of the differences between him and his partner, and what doesn't get really explained, and I was so confused the whole time, was so their daughter. It's it's clearly not their daughter. Yeah, it's his partner's daughter. That she knows her mom. Yeah. So it makes me think of, like, so they have pictures of them when they were younger, and he had been gay, and it makes me think of, like, okay, he had been, like, out doing, like, his thing. He was out, and then at some point, went back in, or like is bisexual and was like, okay, I'm going to start a family, and then was like, no, I'm gay, and like took his kid and then rekindled a relationship with him. Like that's the timeline that I could piece together.
Yeah.
Because at some point he was in a hetero
relationship
of some kind. And so there's a whole plot that we're missing with that daughter of like, how is she dealing with this? Like we get little clips where people say things like, don't drink out of their drinks because they could have AIDS and now you'll catch it, which was like a common like narrative that happened during that time. And like her kind of coming into her sexuality. And I think that, you know, Bower-Chapman does a really good job of like being this like quirky stepfather figure, and he calls her like honey or pudding or something. He's like super sweet, and he's like also very real. He's just like, like that's not how
he both like respects the boundary and also like realizes moments where he has to step in and be like, hey, you're doing something that's unsafe, and like I know I'm not like your dad, but like I need to make sure you're okay because I care about you. Like, you're my stepchild. Like I care about you, and you need to be good. I'm not gonna like be like, I'm new dad. You know, I hate your mom. I'm new dad. But he's like very much like he knows when to step in and when like he's very great as a stepdad. Yeah,
he's very much like I am an adult. I have experienced things, and I know that the world is more dangerous, and I want you to be aware of that and to operate with that knowledge that your father's never going to tell you to do because your father doesn't know about it, right? And, like, he kind of understands, like, you're a woman. You're a young girl. You're going to be taken advantage of the way that, like, people in my communities are taken advantage of, right? And then we also have this, like, parallel, like these flashbacks that happen to, you know, him as a youth and having trauma from that. There's another thread of, like, he keeps calling an ex, and we don't really know,
like, where they are, if they're real, happens, if he's talking to his lost ex-lover, like...
if that person is alive. Which is, like, interesting, and then... So I think, like, the first half, or a good chunk of the beginning, like, really up until, I'd say, the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah,
we're pretty solid. There's a part where, when our main character starts to spiral out and kind of loses the thread of reality because of, like, possibly real-life things of them switching out his meds, his anxiety medication with LSD or something akin to that at the time. And so he's actually kind of losing it.
Yeah, he's, like, seeing things because they switched his medication.
And time isn't going in the proper way. He doesn't remember things, so we don't remember things. They're telling us stuff happened, but we didn't see that happen, and did it really happen? Which is, like, confusing and exciting. Like, there's parts of it where you're just like, oh, what is going on? But, yeah, I think some of it is, like, an exciting kind of thrill of, like... And it's very empathetic. Because it really puts you into his, like, position of, like, what is real? I don't know. Which is I think a good thing. And then, you know, we get to the end, and I think a part of the end reveal, and, you know, we're spoiler town, is that it kind of takes away the whole narrative of this being about the gay experience and kind of undermines that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's this section where they go into the people who lived there before them, and it was this lesbian couple. So they were still sticking to the whole, it's a queer experience. Like, these people are targeting people who are queer, and that is what the film is about. And then, as you said, like, in the last 15 minutes, they're just like, no, but we're also, it's like 2001? Yes.
Yeah.
And now the people are scared of the Muslim community. Yeah. So we're just going to throw that in there. And it's kind of, just really, like, belittle, like, it's just saying, like, all minority experiences are the same. Which isn't true. Yeah. And then just, like, really just kind of, it just made a lot of really great statements leading up, and then, like, sullied it. Yeah.
And not to, like, again, bring in Get Out, but I think, like, one of the best parts of Get Out was that, you know, it was that this family was purposefully seeking out black bodies to inhabit. And, you know, like, the one guy, the blind guy says, like, pretty offhandedly, just like, you know, you just so happens that you're black. That's not what we were looking for, right? But it is a statement on, like, how we, you know, will appropriate and, like, worship and, you know, put on, you know, the garb and the culture of black people and not give any credit or acknowledge or support for them just being themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so that in itself is a statement. Like, that's the whole point. So the point of them being inside of black bodies was on purpose.
Yeah.
This is like, we just need a scapegoat. You happen to be that. So it really took away, like, the power that is being gay. Like, it wasn't actually a statement at all. Like, it was like... It was
just like, you fit this thing, so we're gonna murder you.
Yeah, you're just conveniently the thing that we hate right now.
Yeah.
Which could be anybody.
And that really, it honestly, like, one, gives white people too much credit.
Yeah.
It really,
we always be doing that.
Like, it's literally, it's just like, oh, it's not cause of that. It's literally, it's like, no, it's actually because there's, like, a lot of history of, like, awfulness.
Yeah.
Specifically from the white community to the black community, and then also from, like, white moderate America towards the queer community.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's, like, just totally ignoring that exists, or... I'm just gonna say anybody could be the victim of this.
Yeah. It didn't have to be you. We don't hate your kind.
Yeah, it's convenient.
Just everyone else does. So.
And I mean, I guess that also is like capitalism convenience, but I don't think that's what they were trying to say. That's giving it a little too much credit.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah.
So I read an article. You also read some articles.
I did.
One is from The Spool, which we've used before. I do enjoy their commentary, but this is called Spiral Goes for Twists but Ends Up Tangled by Sean Price. And it has a lot of really good, like, he makes a lot of good points, or they make a lot of good points. And so I wanted to kind of, like, highlight something. So one, they say, the movie is obviously a metaphor for the persecution of those conservative America considers others, but the script doesn't make the effort to connect the pagan horror and the larger political themes. Ultimately, that deflates the whole enterprise. Yeah. And, like, I wouldn't say that the whole thing is a loss.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good film. Like, they made it. Yeah. It's a fun time.
Yes.
You know.
I will say it is thrilling. Yeah. I was enthralled the whole time. The cinematography works really well with, like, feeling claustrophobic. It's pretty dark. Mm-hmm. The lighting, like, they play with lighting quite a lot. And even when you're losing the thread and it gets kind of art housey. Yeah. It's like, you want to know. You want to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then the end reveal was interesting, right? Like that. Yeah. That was all orchestrated. Like, they knew what was going on the whole time, and it's sadly, like, you're falling into the trap, right? Mm-hmm. But a part of that, I think, is true to life, right? Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes you just fall into the trap, right? And so I think that to me was exciting, and so I feel like the ending, like, having the Muslim family be the next victims is a little disappointing and sad, because then it does kind of diminish that tale. But I think the whole thing really was trying to do that. And it is hard to kind of, like, to complete. Yeah. It is hard to complete. There's one more quote I want to bring up from Sean, and then we'll talk about the other article. But here is what they say. But the scariest part of the movie isn't the devil-worshipping or gruesome violence that comes later in the film. It's when Pat Buchanan's infamous culture war speech from the 1992 Republican National Convention plays out of a car radio. It's truly wild stuff, but it's also a speech that could have easily been reused like a racist Mad Lib with different phrases and minority groups swapped out at the 2020 Republican National Convention. Yeah. As one of the Satanists in this film eloquently sums it up, when the tides change, there will be someone else to fear. Alas, Spiral can't sustain its story or political ambitions. Yeah. So I think that part was really stressful too, because that's like a part where, like, he's losing it. It was kind of just like strangers, you're home. Yeah, it felt very much like you were there. You just happened to be there. Yeah, and that I think it's like, it was a little jarring when that part comes up because it's in the midst of like a breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
You're hearing these like this hatred and this empowered hatred, right? In the radio, in a car where like he has clearly had trauma before in cars. Like, already he is in the midst of absolutely losing it. And it kind of reminded me of, and it's interesting because this came out before that, but Lovecraft Country and how Misha Green's team would sometimes, or pretty much every episode, weave in some either speech or a performance or something that was related to what was happening in that episode over top of it. Like the what is it? The Colored Girls speech that happened, or like the Whitey's on the Moon retelling. Like those parts really like intertwines like with reality with this like supernatural weird stuff, and I liked that here too. And it's interesting that it just so happens to be like this is the year that we're seeing those things. And I think it does speak to the plot or like the point in that we could switch it out for whatever crazy things they said at the 2020 National Convention, because like they're always going to hate and people are always going to accept that hate.
Yeah. And I mean, if we think that this is the same person who made What Keeps You Alive.
Yeah.
And in our research of that, we had come up with the answer that originally this character that is like the partner of the other woman was written as a male character. And they just switched it out. And it was lacking only in that fact. Like you could feel that they didn't kind of like give character development for that specific end of the story.
Like didn't acknowledge it.
And you kind of get that same kind of energy here. Like you have the whole, they could have switched it out with any experience, but because they're specifically trying to make queer voices feel more seen in the horror community because they've been historically underrepresented despite like queer people's love of the horror genre itself. You get this like kind of like half-butted version of that, which it's arguably a very good film, but it just really doesn't sell home this thing it sets up. And I found an article too, it's on CBR.com. Shudder original film Spiral attempts to be a queer Get Out and almost succeeds. So we basically, as I said, like people of the LGBTQIA community frequently identify with horror films. It's through the movies themselves usually lack queer representation. And that's something that's been a problem. So as a way to remedy this, Shudder and this group got together and they're like, all right, we're going to make this film. It's going to be about a queer experience. And it sort of gets there. But then it continues to go, undeniably, Spiral is a good film. The problem is, however, that it does not live up to the potential of its incredible concept. While the film is enjoyable, well-acted, entertaining, and genuinely suspenseful, the stories shift halfway from society's bigotry to surreality, marks a loss of focus that ultimately waters down the movie's message.
Yeah.
And that's what we get.
That's the heart,
They just switched it, and they're like, all right, everyone's going to be fine with this. And I think in our last research, like, we found, I mean, obviously we can't be like, are you gay?
Yeah.
To the directors and writers, but there wasn't any information about whether or not this was written by a queer person writing about their own experiences and perspectives, the whole nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously we can't know, but are these stories being written by people who have the right to tell them?
Yeah, or like, are those people in the room? Which is like, it is an interesting conversation, because Shudder is behind horror noir documentary. And they're doing the queer horror documentary of the same vein, right? And to talk about like queer culture, because horror is very queer. It has a lot of queer experiences just inherently in it, in that it is exploring this like outsider, monstrosized, like demonized communities, right? Like unjustly so, right? And to feel, you know, like you can be any number of characters on the screen. And so I think like the problem with this film is that like horror itself is already doing a lot of that work, just in what it does. So I think they kind of, like you said, half-butted it, where it was just like, okay, we almost had it here, right? Like we were missing it just a little bit with what keeps you alive. So all we have to do is just be more intentional this time. And then they threw it again. So it's just like, okay, what if we try one more time? And if we could try one more time, like in the future of like whatever Shudder and this team or another team who, you know, are possibly at the very least more vocal in our outs, in our like, you know, definitively saying like, this is my experience. I'm going to write about it and then, you know, put it out there. Like if we could have something like that, I think we could get there because we're closer.
Yeah.
It's just
this is a good step.
Yes.
It's obviously not the end goal that we want, but it's going to take time to get to that end goal.
Yeah.
It's like any film that you see, you can love a lot of it, but there's always going to be something until we get to, I mean, honestly, arguably, I'll say there'll always be something.
Yeah.
That could be better or changed. And this film was good.
Yeah.
It was a fun time. But there is like this question of, were the people who should have been in the room? And if they were, I mean, obviously, you can't like be like, if we have this expectation of one person, we can be like, yours must be perfect. You're representing everything that is that.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
But even if they were in the room, like, this is a good first, this is what they were able to do.
Yeah.
And it was fun. They just kind of, as anyone can, if they're writing something, like, lost their way kind of at the end.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. And like I said, like, I think Jeffrey Bower-Chapman does a phenomenal job. I think, you know, and because there's some parts in the script that aren't written super well. There's some dialogue that I feel like was like, or there's like plots. But I think he really like took what he was given.
Oh yeah, he was
transformed
the star. Like,
yeah,
his acting made the whole film. Like, I think it would have been a bad film if not for him.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Like what keeps you alive? I can't really remember. Like I vaguely remember those characters. I remember what happened.
The one who was being attacked. Very vividly.
Yeah, I remember her, and I remember like the struggle, but like even when all that was happening, it was kind of like I want you to survive. I want you to fight back. But with his character, I really was just like, we gotta do something. Like we gotta get out. Like my heart felt so strongly for like just his face always just being like you know, like why is no one understanding this? And how else do people deal with confronting like pagan worshippers and all that? Which that whole plot seemed bizarre. Like I didn't quite understand why they were doing what they were doing.
I hated the part where, like, there was someone who broke into their house and put, like, a really messed... I forget what it said exactly, but it was like
hate speech on
the wall, and he doesn't tell his partner.
Yeah.
And it's like, that made me upset, because I was like, one, when he reacts later, you're like, all right, I get why.
Yeah.
But also, he doesn't have all the information. Yeah. So, like, if he saw that, too, like, if he left it there... For him to see it too, maybe he would have been more on board with this wacky pagan scenarios being played out.
At the very least, he'd understand that they're bigots.
Yeah, and that's enough to fear too. Like, even
I think a part of that though
that made
is
me sad.
His need to protect.
Yeah,
like because he is so often a victim. Like he is so often afraid and anxious, and he knows what that feels like, and so he works really hard to protect his family and their sanity.
Yeah.
Right? Like with the young girl, like as you mentioned, like being the like cool stepfather, right? But there's this genuine like honest love and affection for her, and really wanting her to understand the dangers of the world, but also not wanting her to be victim to it. Like he wants her to not have to be scared, right? Like he wants her to have like a good life that she could have had she said had her heteronormative family, right? And so there's probably some guilt there too of kind of like probably having
like I broke up your family.
Yeah, even if like he didn't, you know, like that's gonna be there. And then like also protecting his partner who, as we mentioned, does have this privilege of not noticing all of the dangers of the world. And so I think a part of that and a part of why he's hesitant and uncomfortable at telling him those things is that, but also because like he's the worst.
Yeah.
His partner, the whole time we were just like, this guy sucks so hard. Like, how could you be so uncomfortable like being honest and open with your partner.
I will say, I feel like a lot of people who are in like mixed race couples during May to August,
Yes,
probably related pretty heavily to their dynamic.
Yes.
In the privilege end of just not seeing. Like, I've had very big moments where I'm like, am I handling things in a way where you feel seen and heard? Like, we've had those conversations, and like, luckily, yes. But, like, I have lots of friends who have told me, like, stories about how, like, they've been in relationships and they do not feel seen by their white partner just because of what's happening in the world, like, and the fact that it's like something that they can put in their pocket and still walk outside and be like, la da da, because it doesn't directly impact them when it should. And I feel like you really see that in their relationship, which I think is good. I do wish there was a part where they showed where they were like happy.
Yeah.
It really didn't seem like their relationship was ever in its honeymoon phase.
There was like some affectionate moments that were comfortable. Like it was like
it seemed
they've
genuine.
been doing this for a long time kind of love. That eventually gets tired, like most things, right? Like you just get tired of a person, right? Yeah. But I agree. I think like there really is like him not even knowing that something could be up and that he should be more sensitive to that. But that's a part of of being a partner in a mixed race relationship is like you need to acknowledge that and like you were doing. Make those check-ins, like make it like check yourself to be like, am I doing this? Because that is a part of your role as someone in that relationship. And just like analyzing any amount of privilege that you might have, like, because we all do. Like even just being like the fact that I'm light-skinned and femme presenting, right? Like those are things that also like are beneficial to me in certain situations. Or like, you know, not like being neurotypical, right? Like that's a part too that I always have to be like, okay, I have to acknowledge that there are like spheres and situations in which I have privilege that I do have to like check and just make sure that I'm not like coming into this from that. And I think like it is the 80s. It is a time where there's a lot going on and we weren't really having these conversations out loud. Yeah,
that was definitely the time period in which a lot of people swallowed the awfulness of the world and like didn't have conversations and fought instead. They kind of put everything in a pocket or like a bag that they carried on their shoulders and like didn't acknowledge it as a problem. That's why a lot of our parents don't know how to talk about their feelings. Yeah. And instead we'll just like yell at each other.
Yeah, that's why there's a lot of divorce.
Because people don't say things. They let things develop. They leave each other in their minds. And then they don't talk about it till it's like, ooh. Yeah. This is a problem.
Yeah. And I think like
demons are eating my child. Like,
let's do something. Let's deal with this. I think the fact that it took until that for him to be like, maybe he's right. Yeah. Maybe he was right this whole time. It was really sad, but I also think it adds to the plot. I like that there was this additional layer to privilege in the experience, like that there's not one gay experience. Yeah. And that was refreshing. That was like nice to see.
And also none of them were like, I don't know, like how they kind of like stereotype gay people. Like if you're a gay man, you have to be like fabulous. Yeah. Like that wasn't a thing. They were just people.
Yeah. That's true. No one was like, who's the top? You don't. It didn't really come up. Like it wasn't even a question, right? Like you're just like, yes, I'm sure they have sex. We don't need to know how. Yeah. Like they're just
like people. I don't ask anybody else about that. Yeah. Whatever. It's like I'm not asking. That is your business.
That's so true.
Your genitals are for each other.
Yeah. It wasn't like Modern Family. Yeah. Which is good. Which is so funny because in Modern Family, the one that people see as like the character that's like more gay or like the flamboyant one is actually straight in real life, and the more straight-edged one is actually gay in real life. So I just think that's a fun fact for me. Yeah. But yeah, like I totally didn't even think of that because I was just like, oh yes, of course. Yeah. People like. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because we identify it in the queer community, so we're just more awareness. But there are probably people who are like, they don't even seem gay.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah. You're so right.
But because,
I was like, well, yeah.
It's normal for us because we identify as queer.
Yeah, it's like, Of course. Like,
Yeah,
some days we want to be femme, sometimes we're masc, sometimes you're just androgynous, like, whatever you want, which is the queer experience. Yeah, there are some really great things that I think are very genuine. I wish there was, and in the article, there's also conversations about the daughter and how she doesn't really get a lot of screen time, but when she's on there, like, she is also powerful. I think she's, like, as far as actors go, like, I definitely felt her as, like, a moody teenager who's, like really, like, is a good kid.
Yeah.
And also just, like, wants to have a normal life, but still love these people. Like, I think she does genuinely love and care for them, and is just kind of rolling with the punches, isn't, like, hateful or awful, and it's just, like, a girl. But I think there could have been more explored with her. I feel like I didn't... It seemed weird to me when she was just, like, dating him. That one guy.
Yeah, and there was a few things that, like, I think they could have done better, too. Because it was, like, one, when you had the intro comment from the boyfriend who lived far away, where he said the really homophobic thing about don't share water because you'll get AIDS or whatever.
Yeah.
That there wasn't an obvious that she didn't feel okay with that, but, like, you could tell she did later, because she definitely did, like, pay respect to, what was the guy's name? You said it a few times.
Jeffrey Bower-Chapman.
Yes, Jeffrey Bower-Chapman. And, like, his presence in her life, and, like, you could tell she cared about him, too. Like, they cared about each other as much as she is a moody teenager. Yeah. And she was kind of empowered in her own right, that she was like, there's this boy here, and he's like, I want to make it special. And she's like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, just do.
I'm going to take ownership of my sexuality. If we're going to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, that was so weird, because then it was revealed that, like, he's been a teenager for forever. Yeah. Because he dated the lesbian's daughter as well. Yeah. Who wants to be a teenager forever? He has to go to school all the time. Of life.
I mean, that's arguably Twilight, too.
Yeah, he's just Edward Cullen. It's gross. Yeah. Who wants to do that?
It's like, you are basically, as much as you are a teenager forever, you are a child predator.
Yeah. Yeah. That's weird. Yeah. Like, side note of Twilight, the smartest of the vampires there was, I forget his name, but because he went to school. He, like, went to college and, like, has a bunch of degrees. Like, he used his time to learn, like, real things, because he's got infinite time.
I will say, Edward Cullen did not need to stay in high school. He looked like a grown man in high school. Yeah. Like, no one's going around checking his biology to see if he's actually 16. Yeah. Like, he could have definitely went to college and just been like, I look young. What's up? Yeah. Like, I was going to look...
in college?
I just or high school. Look young. Like, there are people in college who are children. Like, literally, because they're geniuses. Like, they go to college because they're smart.
Well, just don't go to school. Why do you need to go to school?
He doesn't.
You don't.
He lives forever.
You don't need to go. Why are you taking calculus?
It was just, it was really dumb. Anyway. The whole premise.
Anyway. This week on The Ghouls Trash Twilight, we could probably have a whole series.
It's just that movie is awful.
The book is too. The whole thing. I've read all of them. It's all bad. Yeah. Anyway.
Just like, this man should not be in high school. No. Impregnating people. Jesus.
Then
I'm sure they were old. She was older baby when that happened.
No.
No, she wasn't? She was still a child?
She was still in high school, I think.
Oh, God.
And then he chewed her baby out.
It sounds like...
of her body.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Anyway.
Spiral.
Speaking of horror. Twilight is a horror movie. TM. Yeah, so that was Spiral. And the start of our conversation. I think it's a good start. Yeah. Because, I think there's a lot of wins.
Yeah. It does a good job in a lot of ways. Yeah. It just kind of, like, misses it at the end there. Yeah. And, I agree. Like, the daughter didn't get enough screen time. But really, it was him he was acting the whole film. Yeah. he was doing it.
I want to see more of him.
And I definitely think, like, the partner sucked. And I wish, like, he didn't suck so hard, you know? Mm-hmm. But, I mean, that's just...
That's the way
sometimes
the
there
news
are good
goes.
white people. That's what it is.
Yeah. It sucks because I do feel like there was potential for him to have been good.
He just, or at least, like, slightly more, like, recognizing how wonderful he was. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, because he was great.
Or being sympathetic of the fact that he has anxiety.
More empathetic. He was just very much a gay Republican, and he needed to chill.
He was Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
Although you would argue he's Democratic.
Or in Stepford Wives.
Yeah. Yes, the gay Republican. Yes, just like Stepford Wives. So true.
Yeah, he definitely had that
so
energy.
True.
And it was a shame. Because Chapman deserved
truth.
better.
Yeah, he does. And yeah, I think we're in the right direction. And I'm excited for what the future holds, because if this can exist and people love it, because I mean, definitely go out and watch it. I think everyone should watch it, because it is really good.
It is good. Like, honestly, it's just the last
enjoyed it.
10 minutes that was like, oh.
Yeah.
But like, otherwise, good movie.
Yeah. And even then I was like, I want to see that one now.
Yeah, right?
I want to see what they do to them. I want to see them prevail. Like the
yeah,
Muslim
like
family.
they come. That would be a good sequel. Like, someone wins.
Hey, Shudder.
Like, with that, like, yeah.
Hey, Shudder.
And then we got different representation that needs to be seen.
Yeah.
Like, we
Shudder,
need
let's do
different
a
groups.
2020 version where it's a Mexican family. Because ICE is evil.
And then they murder them.
F ICE, you know what I'm saying? And they win.
Yeah, they win.
That's the kind of revenge film I want to see.
Because they're smart and they have all this, like, knowledge of stuff, and they get rid of them.
Yeah. Well, hire me, Shudder. I have a great idea. I'll start writing right now. But with that being said, don't get married. They'll eat your kids.
Literally. That's another film
oh,
where
they did. They ate the kid. They ate the kid. Don't get married or gay married. It's the same. It's all marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, bye.